Please be aware, in this podcast series we talk about all areas of safeguarding, which some people may find upsetting. So please make sure you're okay listening to today's topic. Be mindful of those around you, such as children, that you might not want to listen in. Hi, I'm SSS Safeguarding Director Sam Preston.
And I'm former head teacher and content author Sarah Spinks.
Welcome back to Safeguarding Conversations. Today we're tackling a topic that's hitting classrooms across the country hard, the impact of online culture on school behaviour. From misogynistic influencers to rising violence, we'll be exploring what's really happening and what schools can do. So as ever, let's start with the data. A recent survey by the NASUWT Teaching Union has laid bare what many teachers have been saying for months. Online culture is fueling poor behaviour in schools.
You know, it really is. The survey found that nearly 60% of the 5,800 teachers surveyed said social media is the single biggest factor in declining pupils' behaviour. And it's not just disruption. It's abuse, it's violence, it's deeply ingrained misogyny.
Now, I know the report highlights influencers like Andrew Tate, doesn't it? Who was mentioned by dozens of teachers within the survey as having a direct impact on boys' attitudes. And I think one even said 10-year-olds refused to speak to her because of his views on male dominance.
Yeah, and that's just chilling, really, But what's important to remember is that Tate is just one figure in a much bigger digital ecosystem.
Yeah.
One that includes far-right ideologies, racism and sexism being shared across gaming platforms, messaging apps and social media.
So let's talk about what that looks like on the ground, Sarah. Teachers are saying more than just what we used to term attitude problems, aren't they? Some are facing, actual physical attacks.
Yeah, the numbers are stark. Over 2 in 5 teachers on that survey said they'd experienced violence from pupils in the past year. 1 in 5 had been punched or hit. Some were kicked, spat at, and even attacked with objects like fire hydrants.
That is really, truly shocking, isn't it? And it goes deeper than the physical safety aspect. There's a gender and racial element too, isn't it?
Absolutely. So female teachers are reporting regular verbal abuse, some daily, and teachers from Black or African backgrounds are more likely to face repeated physical attacks. And these aren't isolated incidents. They sort of reflect that systemic, intersecting problems that we're seeing in schools.
One part of the article that we published recently that really stood out for me was Michael Conroy's, who's from the community interest company Men at Work, his warning about the digital pipeline, how exposure to things like online pornography can start as early as age 8, feeding into those misogynistic attitudes.
Yeah, and by the time they encounter influencers like Tate, it's just reinforcing what they've already been conditioned to believe online. That dominance and aggression are part of being male.
So how do we interrupt it, Sarah? How do we interrupt that pipeline? What can schools actually do?
Well, the NASUWT are calling for a multi-agency response, and rightly so. So teachers, they just can't tackle this alone.
Yeah, I think that includes critical thinking education, isn't it? Training for staff to spot disinformation and challenge it, and also a curriculum that really actively, and I mean really actively, tackles misogyny and racism.
And let's not forget regulation. The Online Safety Act is starting to give schools some backup, but many are still overwhelmed. The Liberal Democrats are even calling for a safer screens task force to help schools directly.
Which is a step in the right direction, but there's also a need to address deeper root causes. We need to look at poverty, inequality, the lack of digital literacy in families.
Well, the Department of Education put it quite well, actually. Education can be the antidote to hate, but only if classrooms are resourced and empowered to do it,
Yes, yes. And it means that schools need safe spaces for these conversations where young people can talk about what they're seeing online, ask questions, and build resilience.
And because if schools don't step in, these online messages will keep filling the vacuum. And we're already seeing the consequences in behaviour, in language, and in rising levels of violence.
So just to summarise, we're not just seeing a few children copying a viral video here. We're seeing a generation absorbing complex, often toxic messages from the online world. And schools, let's be honest, they're being left to deal with the fallout.
Yeah, and it's not enough just to punish poor behaviour. We have to understand where it's coming from. And that means education, prevention, and joined up action from schools, parents, government, and tech platforms. It has to be a whole scale multi-agency element to this.
And I'm so glad in that list there, Sarah, you included the tech platforms.
Absolutely.
Because I think there has to be responsibility placed on these platforms. I know this is me, I feel like I'm banging the same drum. I know I always come back to this, but I just think there has to be more rigid accountability here for these tech platforms.
Definitely.
So if you want to explore more, please check out our recent article on this, which I think we titled How Online Culture is Affecting School Behaviour, which I think, if memory serves me, it went live on the 7th of May 2025. That is at the time of recording. So you can find that on the SSS Learning website. Please share this episode with colleagues, your leaders, and anyone working with young people. It's important to get on the radar. The more we understand this issue, the better that we can respond.